Pro-democracy activists say they fear the end of Hong Kong after China announced plans to enforce new national security laws in the semi-autonomous region. The clampdown is aimed at curbing protests which have brought violent demonstrations to the territory over the past year. Well, I'm joined now by the Secretary-General of the Pro-Democracy Party, Demosisto, Joshua Wong, who's also a prominent activist. Joshua, really appreciate you talking to us this morning. Firstly, what could a change in law mean for activists such as yourself?
Beijing announced to bypass the Legislative Council in Hong Kong and impose the controversial bill that would eroding the freedom of Hong Kong, which named as the National Security Law, which just resulted in Hong Kong turn from one country, two system to be one country, one system.
Hong Kong back in 2003 tried to enact a sedition law. Some 500,000 people turned up onto the streets. What should we expect in 2020?
In 2003, Beijing suggested to impose the law, and it still at least go through the legislation process in Hong Kong local level. But right now, Beijing just announced that the National People Congress will bypass and override the legal system and also the legislature in Hong Kong and impose what they want and to target dissident. In the previous day, Nobel Peace Prize winner Liu Xiaobo might just exist in China, but now in the upcoming future might exist in Hong Kong. So how can we prepare for the fight and mobilize more people even than 2019? That's the challenge that Hong Kong has faced.
Beijing says this is to make sure that national security is protected. I mean, how concerned are you that it's going to stop you carrying out your ability to demonstrate an ability that you in Hong Kong on the territory hold so dear?
That's not the national security law. We would describe it as kind of security law for the interest of communist regime. And the most important issue is this national security law. It detailed regulation mentioned that it might target any activist or politician that engage in any kind of international advocacy, which means that if young activists participate in congressional hearing, meet with MPs in UK, they might also be targeted and also face any kind of political prosecution that we never imagined in the previous day. But Hong Kong is a global city. We must let our voice be heard worldwide.
So what do you think is likely to happen now? I mean, what do you think Beijing's response will be if there are widespread protests across the territory?
I believe if we can mobilize more than 1 million Hong Konger take back to the street before or after the anniversary of Tiananmen Square massacre, absolutely, it will let Beijing to know that Hong Kong never kowtow to Beijing, even under the chilling effect generated by them.
Do you think it will make a difference? I mean, Beijing hasn't budged from its position in the past.
Last year, more than 2 million Hong Kongers took to the street, result in the controversial extradition bill withdrawn by Beijing, and Beijing compromised to Hong Kongers. And we believe how the national security law being directly imposed from Beijing to Hong Kong without any procedural justice or check and balance, which just proved that it will trigger another trend of Hong Kongers gather on street again in the summer.
So what do you make of claims by Beijing and officials in China who say that people like you, activists like yourself, despite being part of a political party, are troublemakers? You're there to cause disruption in the territory.
We are just asking for free election. If other international cities, just like New York or London, they can let the resident to elect the mayor, so why can't Hong Kong? The only reason behind is Beijing broke the promise of the Sino-British Joint Declaration and imposed the national security law, turned Hong Kong to be one country, one system. And even until this moment, no one could ensure or guarantee if any Hong Kongers might be extradited or being brought to China to face the trial without any transparency and any kind of legal principle. So the tremendous change lies ahead. We must keep on the fight in Hong Kong and also encourage more world leaders and also politicians around the world to stand with Hong Kong to confront the crackdown from the National People Congress in Beijing.
You mentioned world leaders there, Joshua. Just looking at what the US State Department has said off the back of this, any effort to impose national security legislation that does not reflect the will of the people of Hong Kong will be highly destabilising and would be met with strong condemnation from the international community. So with that in mind, does that fill you with confidence?
No matter the Global Magnitsky Act in European country or Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act in United States, we also encourage the world to stand with Hong Kong and actions speak louder than words. It's time to enhance and to impose the sanction mechanism and let Beijing to realize that they can't ignore the universal value that we all believe in, especially when now the number of arrested activists in Hong Kong since last summer are already more than the number of prisoners now being physically locked up in prison. The chilling effect generated by Beijing is far from anyone's imagination 23 years ago before the transfer of sovereignty. But now it's also a critical timing to urge the world to stand with Hong Kong. And we also look forward for the UK Foreign Ministry to respond to the crisis happening in Hong Kong.